You know, I think we're all fundamentally predictive animals.
We crave certainty.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Whether you're trying to time the market
Hmm.
or check the 5-day forecast, there's just this real psychological comfort in believing we know what's coming next.
It gives you a sense of control.
It does. But then you take that same desire, that need for certainty, and you try to apply it to something like a major international conflict.
And the whole thing just falls apart.
The crystal ball shatters instantly. The truth is, when real chaos hits, our detailed forecasts are, well, they're probably less useful than a coin flip.
Mm-hmm.
So today, we are diving deep into your source material, and we're going to examine why that conventional planning, the kind based on predicting specific events, is really a fool's errand in wartime.
Right.
Our mission is to understand that really necessary, probably painful strategic pivot, moving away from trying to foresee what will happen to building this robust, adaptive, industrial preparedness for anything that might happen.
And that pivot, it all hinges on getting those two terms right.
Forecasting and preparedness.
Exactly. They get used interchangeably, but they are fundamentally different things. Forecasting is that human tendency you mentioned. It's the craving for certainty.
Pinpointing the exact date, the exact number of tanks you'll need.
Yes. It's about projecting the outcome of a known risk. Preparedness, on the other hand, it throws out the specific timeline. It throws out the exact event. It's not about predicting the future at all.
It's about building shock absorbers.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it. Building systemic shock absorbers, developing adaptive capabilities, and, having this robust industrial capacity that's ready to go. The reason our traditional models break down is actually pretty simple. They are designed to manage quantifiable risk.
But war isn't just risk.
No, war introduces radical, dynamic, and frankly, unpredictable variables.
Okay, so that's the core distinction then. Radical uncertainty. I mean, isn't some level of uncertainty built into every model we use? What makes the chaos of conflict so different that it just breaks our planning?
It's the difference between, let's say, a known unknown and a truly unknowable unknown.
Okay.
You can measure certain risks, right? Things like a predictable natural disaster or a standard market fluctuation. Those can be calculated.
You can put a probability on them, hedge against it.
Exactly. That's good economics. But radical uncertainty means you're confronting things that are completely outside your data sets, maybe even beyond your current imagination.
Right.
I mean, just think about what we've seen in the last couple of years. The rapid, completely unexpected innovation in small battlefield tech.
Drones.
The widespread, cheap proliferation of lethal drones, that changed the tactical landscape almost overnight. Or look at the sudden disruption to those critical supply chains through the Red Sea.
No model saw that coming with any precision.
No. No traditional model from a few years ago was accurately weighting the probability of those specific dynamics, let alone their economic impact. These are genuine game changers that linear forecasting just completely misses.
And this feeds right into that. That very human failing the analysis calls the peril of overconfidence bias. It's not just that our model was wrong. It's that we believed it was right, against all the evidence.
We saw that play out across Europe after the Cold War, didn't we?
Absolutely. The prediction was for prolonged peace. The peace dividend, they called it.
So nations just slashed their defense spending.
They optimized their supply chains for maximum peacetime efficiency, let strategic reserves just dwindle, all under this really dangerous assumption that a big industrial war would just never happen again.
And the cost of that overconfidence has been, well, it's been astronomical.
Of a profound strategic vulnerability.
Yes, that assumption of certainty led directly to an industrial base that's built for low volume and high margins. And now we see this painfully slow ramp up.
So nations are scrambling to fill stockpiles, restart assembly lines.
Lines that have been dormant or minimized for decades. Being wrong here isn't a small error. It's a massive vulnerability.
And I think this realization, connecting that failure to the bigger picture, it's forced this major strategic reappraisal. Now, countries have to define what kind of war economy they actually need. And it's not a single switch you flip, is it? It's more of a gradient.
Absolutely. The term wartime economy it's really a political expression, and it spans a whole range of intensity and objectives. We can use the four phases from your source as a framework to understand what's happening.
Okay.
So at the lowest intensity, you have the war support economy. This is long-term, but it's not direct involvement. You're providing financial aid, intelligence, equipment.
But your own troops aren't fighting.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
essential, but it doesn't fundamentally restructure your domestic economy.
Then you move up a level, adapting your own systems for perceived risks, but still technically in peacetime.
That's the war prevention economy. This is where you're actively investing in deterrence. You're promoting your own defense industry, you're modernizing, conducting exercises, you're preparing for a hypothetical threat. But the really significant step, and this is where many European nations are trying to get to right now, is the third phase, the war preparation economy.
This is where the structural shift begins.
It is. This means strengthening the state and civil society for potential mobilization. It means serious government-backed stock building, mapping out civilian resources, and pre-establishing legal frameworks for intervention.
So it's not just about the military anymore, it's about the whole national engine.
The entire industrial engine. And then finally, the highest intensity is the economy in war, the extreme scenario.
Total state control.
Total state control over industry, labor, resources. Everything is driven purely by survival and victory. And I think it's important for you, the listener, to realize that the challenge right now is that painful shift from prevention to a robust preparation.
Without tipping over into a full-blown economy in war.
Exactly. And to get to that preparation phase, we have to face the structural weaknesses we've built into our economies over the last, 30 years?
So let's focus on those weaknesses, starting with the supply side of things. Why are our defense factories so, fragile when a government suddenly places a massive order to replenish stocks?
There are compounding fragilities. The first one is just our heavy reliance on globalization.
We built it for cost, not for resilience.
Precisely. We have these critical supply chain dependencies on global sources. I mean, think semiconductors, specialized electronic parts, rare raw materials.
So if a single source in Asia or a key shipping lane gets hit,
production just stops. The source calls it the brittleness of just-in-time logistics.
okay, what's the second fragility?
The scale simply isn't there. Defense is, by its nature, a niche sector.
Right.
A modern missile system needs specialized, low-volume suppliers, the subcontractors. They have zero financial incentive to scale up overnight without consistent long-term orders.
And those orders are notoriously volatile in peacetime.
Exactly. They can't afford to run an empty factory just in case the government might call.
And even if they could build a factory, they can't find the people.
That's the third major factor, the critical labor shortage.
Hmm.
These roles require highly specialized skills engineers, welders, certified machinists. The training pipelines are very, very long. We're seeing reports of thousands of vacancies in France, a huge shortage of specialized engineers in the UK. You can't train that workforce in 6 months.
So you have a supply side struggling with scale, brittleness, and skills. And meanwhile, the demand side, the government's trying to buy things, they have their own set of problems.
Oh, yes. Primarily regulation and bureaucracy.
The defense industry needs those consistent, large-scale public orders to justify the investment to scale up. But procurement is always described as this bureaucratic knot.
It is. It's tangled in layers of regulations. Social, environmental, safety standards, military-specific specs, all of which they inflate costs and slow delivery times to a crawl. It's the silent enemy of readiness.
And that reality forces what the material calls the time sovereignty trade-off.
Which is the core dilemma facing leaders right now.
I'd break that down.
Well, on one hand, you have the urgent military need. You need to acquire off-the-shelf solutions, which are usually foreign, but they're available today.
So you solve the immediate vulnerability.
Right. But on the other hand, you have the long-term strategic need, which is to build and sustain your own domestic industrial sovereignty. And that means much longer initial delivery times.
And a much higher initial investment. That is a brutal choice. Sovereignty is the only sustainable path, but waiting for a domestic missile means accepting a capability gap right now.
It does. But the emerging consensus, and the source makes this clear, is this best short-term is the long-term paradigm.
So a commitment to domestic production, even if it's slower at first.
Yes. It's a difficult, politically costly commitment to consciously prioritize building sustainable wartime capacity at home. It's an investment in the next war, even if it feels like it's delaying things for the current one. It's a fundamental acceptance that true resilience has to be built, not just bought off a shelf.
Okay, so we've identified the systemic failures, the brittleness, the labor gaps, the red tape, this painful trade-off. It really sounds like the policy changes required they're nothing short of revolutionary. So let's look at the solutions outlined for the listener. Where do we start?
The response has to start with strategic stockpiling and risk sharing. We need massive national reserves, not just of, say, ammunition.
But the parts to make the ammunition.
Crucially, the raw materials and key components to cushion that first shock. Think of it like a national oil reserve, but for defense components.
Right.
And what's key here is that governments have to stop relying on private industry to hold these reserves alone.
Because it's a financial penalty for them.
It is. They get punished for holding large inventories. The government has to step in and act as a wholesaler, holding and distributing stocks of these high-demand, long lead-time components. That way, industry can produce quickly without bearing all that risk. It means the state has to invest, maybe in reserve plants, and offer loan guarantees to key suppliers.
It makes sense. The taxpayer funds the insurance policy.
Hmm.
Okay, the second big change is about how government actually buys things. Differentiated procurement.
Right. You can't use one single slow process for everything.
So you segment your needs.
Exactly. You need one pathway for the really high-tech, long development systems, like a new $50 billion fighter jet that takes 15 years of R&D.
Okay.
But then you need a completely separate, much faster, streamlined, accelerated acquisition pathway for the emerging high-volume consumables.
Things like a low-cost drones, standard ammunition.
Yes, and that pathway has to leverage civilian innovation, using commercial off-the-shelf technology COATS like integrating commercial AI into mini-drones. This lets the military iterate and adapt based on battlefield feedback every 6 months, not every 10 years.
And the only way you move that fast is if you cut the regulatory red tape, which brings us to regulatory streamlining.
You have to simplify requirements, especially for those consumables, reducing the overly stringent military specifications that just aren't necessary for, say, a disposable drone.
And beyond just simplifying, we need harmonization.
For Europe and NATO to have a truly consolidated industrial base, we have to harmonize military standards across all the allied nations. We've been trying for decades, and it's this slow, agonizing process.
But now it's an existential necessity.
It really is. If every country has a unique standard for its artillery shell casing, you kill the possibility of scale before you even start. And most critically, we need to use what the source calls anticipatory state powers. Meaning, right now, in peacetime, we pre-establish the legal frameworks that allow for rapid state intervention. Things like order prioritization, requisition of civilian manufacturing lines, mandatory stock building, so they can be triggered instantly when a crisis escalates.
You legalize the emergency response before the emergency happens.
That's the goal, to avoid being paralyzed.
That's a huge political commitment. And beyond materials and regulations, we still need people.
Yeah.
So what's the plan for human capital and industrial reserves? How do we fix those labor shortages?
It needs interministerial policies to boost the appeal of defense sector careers. And we can use technology AI-driven simulation, augmented reality, to speed up skill acquisition.
Right, reduce the need for those decade-long apprenticeships for some roles.
Exactly. But the really novel idea here is the concept of industrial reserves. This is more than just counting workers. It means strategically mapping critical civilian skills welding, advanced programming, logistics.
And having a system to mobilize them.
Yes, pre-establishing systems to mobilize non-defense personnel for industrial support during a crisis. It's essentially creating a national guard for your manufacturing capacity.
And finally, a huge investment in resilience and military mobility. This covers everything from the design of the equipment to the roads and rails needed to move it.
That's right. Resilience means designing equipment not just to be tough, but to be maintained and repaired quickly and near the operational theaters. This is where things like additive manufacturing 3D printing become crucial.
So instead of shipping a part across the globe, you just send the file.
You transmit the file and print it closer to the front line. That reduces logistical tail risks massively. It also means securing and localizing critical production chains entirely within Europe. And crucially, investing in infrastructure adaptation, upgrading transport networks, rail connections, bridges to handle the weight and size of military convoys.
So the military has to be able to move rapidly across borders.
And that requires civil-military coordination and exercises to actually test those logistical pathways.
Ultimately, all of this just comes back to that profound mindset shift we started with.
It does, from trying to perfectly foresee the future to making sure we are absolutely forearmed for any scenario.
And we can see the consequences of failing to adapt by looking at a case study in the material, Russia's war economy.
Mm-hmm.
It's shown undeniable short-term resilience, right? It was fueled by prior reserves, diversified exports, and some people might mistakenly think that this kind of rigid, centralized prediction actually works.
But it's operating on borrowed time.
Exactly. The analysis highlights that it's operating on borrowed time. You can see deep structural flaws, mounting pressure from severe labor shortages because of mobilization, limited technological advancement because of sanctions.
Then increased tax burdens. You're borrowing from the future to fund the present. It just shows the long-term unsustainability of an approach that prioritizes rigid control over deep, constant industrial adaptation.
Which is why, for European nations, the final imperative has to be unity.
A consolidated European defense industrial base. Fragmentation is the enemy of scale. We need industrial consolidation, merging or standardizing groups to achieve the scale and efficiency to compete globally.
Paired with mandatory joint procurement.
Yes. By leveraging that collective purchasing power, the Allies can place the large, consistent, predictable orders that industry needs to justify investing in new capacity. And finally, all this requires serious capital.
From EU funding mechanisms like the European Investment Bank.
Or even new dedicated defense-specific banks to inject the massive capital needed for this whole structural transition.
This has been a really necessary exploration of strategic reality. The core takeaway for you, the listener, is definitive. The national and international focus has to move entirely away from rigid planning based on uncertain, often biased forecasts, to building flexible, robust, and adaptable systems across both industry and government.
You have to prepare for any storm, not just the one you think is coming.
Right.
And that leads to a final, provocative thought for you to mull over, which builds on that need for industrial mapping and repurposing.
Okay.
If resilience is the goal, what major civilian industry in your immediate environment, one that has zero defense links right now, maybe a large-scale automotive manufacturer or a specialized chemical plant, what industry holds the greatest potential for rapid, crucial repurposing through that strategic industrial mapping?
So thinking about that hidden capacity that already exists.
Exactly, that capacity that's just waiting to be integrated into a larger strategic reserve.
Go continue your own deep dive. We'll talk soon.